Welcome back to Horrors Worldwide. Today I'm going to explain a South Korean horror film called The Wailing, released in 2016. Spoilers ahead! Watch out and stay safe. The movie starts in Gokseong, a small village in the mountains of South Korea. We meet Jong-goo, a police detective in this town, who is called to the scene of a murder, which is an unusual thing to happen in this village. When he sees the mutilated forms of the murder victims, it is clear that they did not die of natural causes. We switch to a scene where we see a local hunter trying to hunt a deer, but he slips and falls down the side of the mountain. This local then sees an almost naked man in a loincloth eating the raw deer carcass, and when the naked man turns around, the hunter sees that he has strangely glowing eyes. Back at the station, Jong-goo's deputy tells him about a Japanese stranger who has recently moved into town and who he thinks could be responsible for these murders. However, Jong-goo thinks that the murders are more likely the result of some local mushrooms, as the perpetrators of the crime first develop a rash and then get violent, murderous tendencies before they start hallucinating, slip into a coma, and die. That night, Jong-goo is called to the site of a house fire, where a woman is apparently suffering the same violent disease and is assaulting the police officers who are keeping her from running into the house fire. Jong-goo notices that the mysterious Japanese man is standing in the crowd of village people watching the fire. The next morning, the woman is found hanging from a tree outside her burned house. The pictures taken of the victims who died in the fire show that they died from stab wounds and not from asphyxiation as would be expected in a house fire. Additionally, these victims, like all the others, are covered in itchy, red boils. Jong-goo's deputy Song-bak goes to consult the local dermatologist. Jong-goo is sitting outside the burned house when a strange woman approaches and starts throwing stones at him. Her name is Moom-young, and she tells him to stay away from the Japanese stranger because he is a ghost, but then she disappears suddenly, as if she herself is a ghost. He searches around the burned house for her, but in the woods, at the back of the house, he sees the Japanese stranger getting into what looks like raw meat. As the stranger turns toward him, Jong-goo wakes up with a start. When Jong-goo goes to the police station, his deputy Song-bak tells him that they do indeed have a witness to the Japanese man's strange behavior, and that it's not just a dream. They go to visit the local hunter who had gone up to the mountain, and he tells them of the strange vision of the Japanese man eating a raw deer carcass. He also shows them the bite marks on his arm from the stranger and points them in the direction of his cottage. The next morning, Jong-goo notices that his daughter, Hyo-jin, is behaving strangely. His mother-in-law does not want to take any chances with the girl's health and enlists the services of a local shaman named Il-gwang. Jong-goo and Song-bak make their way to the Japanese man's house along with Song-bak's cousin, Yang-i-sam, who is a Japanese-speaking deacon and will act as an interpreter. In his house, they find several shrines, one for the gods and one for the gods' victims. The second shrine contains pictures of the murdered victims and several of their belongings. Suddenly, the Japanese man's dog gets loose and attacks them. However, the dog is contained when his owner suddenly comes home. On the way back, Jong-goo tells Song-bak that he is dazed by the number of victims he has seen over the recent weeks, and also that he found Hyo-jin's shoe among the personal effects of the victims at the Japanese man's house. At home, when Jong-goo asks his daughter about her missing shoe, she gets violent and screams at him. He also notices the same rash as the other victims on her thigh. Jong-goo feels that he has collected sufficient evidence against the stranger in their village and goes to his house again. At the Japanese man's house, however, all the pictures and personal possessions of the victims are gone, and the worship room containing the shrines is empty. Jong-goo asks the stranger what he is doing in the village, but the stranger replies that Jong-goo wouldn't understand. Jong-goo destroys the worship room with a pickaxe and also kills the dog when it tries to attack him. With a bloody, infuriated face, he gives the stranger 3 days to leave the village. The next morning, we learn that another family has been the victim of a similar violent crime, as the string of crimes that have been afflicting the village, and that the primary suspect, Park Geun-bae, has gone missing. Things get worse with Jong-goo's family when they find the bloody carcass of a goat hanging in front of their gate that same morning, and later, Hyo-jin stabs and seriously injures a neighbor. Jong-goo's mother-in-law contacts the shaman who prepares to perform a ritual in their house to heal Hyo-jin. After finding out that Jong-goo disturbed the stranger, he says that the Japanese stranger is a demon and prepares a death hex ritual in order to heal Hyo-jin. In the forest, the Japanese man is standing under a waterfall preparing his body to perform a ritual of his own. Inside his house, we see that this ritual will involve using the corpse of Park Geun-bae. As the evening descends, a ritual is going on at Jong-goo's house, led by the shaman, while the Japanese man is performing a ritual at his own house, which involves possessing the corpse of Park Geun-bae. We can see that both Hyo-jin and the Japanese man at their separate locations are in excruciating pain. Jong-goo arrives home and seeing his daughter in pain interrupts the ritual, and he takes her to the hospital. Because of this interruption, the ritual fails. The next day, Jong-goo gathers his friends and other police officers and discusses with them his suspicion that the Japanese stranger is responsible for the spread of the mysterious disease and the murders. Loading up a truck with different weapons, they go to his house to hunt him down, but find the cottage deserted. While searching for him in the vicinity of his house, they are attacked by the reanimated corpse of Park Gun-bae. The corpse seriously injures Young Isam and proves to be physically much stronger than all of them. During the struggle, they spot the Japanese man fleeing through the woods, but the corpse detains them long enough for the man to escape before it spontaneously collapses and loses its animation. The group of men try to chase down the Japanese man, but they can't find him. As they are driving away after giving up the chase, his body suddenly lands on their windshield. They toss his body over a cliff without being aware of the fact that they are watched by Moon-young. When Jong-goo arrives home, he sees that Hyo-jin is improving. The scene switches to show the shaman driving up to Jong-goo's house, where he meets Moon-young outside. After the meeting, he starts to violently cough up blood, and he calls Jong-goo to tell him that they were mistaken, and that Moon-young is the demon, rather than the Japanese man as they all believed. Jong-goo rushes home and finds Moon-young lurking outside. She tells him that the shaman and the Japanese man are working together, and that they've laid a trap for him. She further says that she has laid a trap for both of them, and if he goes home, his family will be killed. In the meantime, Young Isam has gone back to the Japanese man's mountain cottage and sees a reborn version of the man hiding in a cave nearby. Young Isam confronts the Japanese man and demands that the man prove that he is not a ghost or a demon. Slowly, the Japanese man morphs into a demon as he laughs evilly. Back at Jong-goo's house, he decides not to believe Moon-young, and when she grabs him to stop him, her skin turns ghostly white. He also sees the personal items of some of the victims on her body. He thinks that she must have been lying and rushes into the house to save his family. However, it turns out that she was right, because as he enters, a floral trap breaks and Hyo-jin stabs all the family members, including him, and then falls into a coma like the other victims of the disease. The shaman arrives at the scene and takes pictures of the unfortunate family. As he goes to his car, he accidentally knocks over a box, and photos of all the other victims and their families spill out. As Jong-goo lies dying, he sees his daughter in a vision in happier times and assures her that he'll take care of her. So what did you think of this terrorizing movie? Leave us a comment and let us know. For more horror film recaps, be sure to subscribe, watch our other videos, and click the bell icon to be notified of the next videos. See you in your nightmares.